sweet spot of design practice, something that I do, and I see a lot of value in it. I think that design thinking is great, but it sometimes limits us. So the sweet spot of design thinking comes when you're also bringing in systems engineering and a little bit of strategic foresight. So systems engineering is something that focuses on how different things interact. So what is a system? A system is really multiple components and how they interact with each other. What is the dependency? So say your watch has a lot of different pieces, and if one stop working, the others have an impact. So that's what everything is, a system. Our relationships are a system. Our office dynamics are a system, our utilities are a system. So really, like, and I initially gave you the example of the plastic pollution. So that's also system, right? And foresight is when you start thinking of not just right now, but of future. I'm not going to talk so much about foresight because we won't be able to cover it, but it's also something that will help you have businesses that would sustain, that are not just for today or the current realities, but that can actually stand the test of changing trends, the changing complexities. It will help you do speculative design. It will help you be more future ready. So pandemic, for example, it feels like it came out of nowhere, but there are think tanks that were talking about and speculating on these things from years ago. There's now a lot of speculative and strategic foresight work done around climate change, which we see. But because it's not adapted into our regular practices, we miss out on things. And why you want to do systems work? Because it's non-linear. What I mean by linear is also something that we say in Punjabi, JP lagana. You know, koi choti si bhi problem hui hai, just quick fix, and that's it. You don't think of long term. But systems thinking really allows you to put the problem in the middle, think about it from long term. So if you put the curious child or the interest in astronomy or astrology or whatever, then you start off thinking of benefit of that, utility of that, access to that, information around it. And you start to really look at it from industry perspective, policy perspective, utility perspective. And I also wanted to, so this is an example of my work that I did and I got hated for a lot because it's annoying. The ringtones that you started hearing during COVID, right? So COVID ke time pe, the first thing that anybody would say was कि oh मैं WhatsApp कर दूँ या फिर आप Facebook पे डाल दें. But you have to understand that there's still 4 billion people who are not connected. So they may not be using, and we're talking also about Pakistan, they may not be using internet, so they'll miss out on that information. Then you say कि अच्छा newspaper में दे देते हैं, but again there's a percentage that does not read newspapers. Then you say कि अच्छा radio में कर लेते हैं. Radio is also not everywhere. We feel that it's everywhere, but when you do data sets, you see that even radio and TV has a limitation of access. But what we found out was that 90 plus people in Pakistan have access to phone, not smartphone, feature phone, but they have access to phone. So फिर you can think about कि अच्छा उनको message कर देते हैं. Not everybody reads messages. Not everybody has literacy, or not everybody reads it. But when you call, so it was a way to force information, right? When you call someone and there's a ringtone, so that ringtone is actually giving you a message. So it wasn't just to say, oh, COVID ho gaya and it's scary, but it was also a message backed with behavioral insight. It was drafted by thinking what can be positive impact. It was to empower you. So A, it was telling you what it was, that we have a pandemic. B, it was telling you that you can do something about it. Third, it was telling you what you can do. And fourth, it was encouraging you to do that by putting your loved ones in a vulnerable place. It had to be a short message. It had to be like, what if somebody picks up the phone after 10 seconds? It costed nothing because at that time, everyone was operating in an emergency response. So the PTCL and all the telecoms were very, very quick and supportive to adapt it. And later when we did the survey, we found out that it had a lot of impact. So 43% people more likely to, stay home or wear mask after hearing the message, and that 71% after hearing the ringtone were more likely to correctly identify the symptoms of the virus. So again, thinking of this is something you can prototype, a lot of these things. So very, very quickly about the foresight bit that I talked about, how do you speculate using design thinking? Let me just quickly focus on what the business case of design is. So a lot of the times when we go to our teams or investors and we say that we're using design practice, design is still somehow looked at as an add-on or something superficial. So you really have to make a case for it. And the toothpaste story really helps with that. But another thing to look at it as that what we know now and how we operate right now is really the current state. But if we want to be long-term, if we want to be non-linear, if we want to ensure that our businesses last, if we want to think about companies that have stayed in the business longer, what was that company that used to make cameras and camera films? And they're no longer in practice because they didn't adapt to change. They remained true to what they wanted to do, and so they didn't adapt, or so we no longer see them. So these kind of thinking and understanding of trends and really being flexible and adaptive and consulting the user again and again and their needs actually allows you to bridge the gap between what your strategic role can be and where you're now, and that gap actually supports in a very, very increased business. In our local context and also in a lot of other contexts, not singling out Pakistan, is that we do a lot of reactive work, right? Suddenly floods have happened. Now everybody wants to work on that. Suddenly there's a trend and everybody wants to react to it. But what we don't do is take time, reflect, and see before pressure comes, what is something that we can do, right? It was designed many, many, many years in advance. So it was ready to be disseminated. Somebody thought that it would emerge as a need. You have to do that. You have to do that kind of thinking with your business. Where exactly would you be in the space of transformation? Because the world is transforming. Time isn't waiting. Circumstances aren't waiting. Would you remain just at the periphery, or would you try to seep in, or would you actually go in the middle and really change it from a broad spectrum kind of a way? So yeah, I think I'll just end here.